All right, welcome to another episode of Comic Book Squares. We just want to remind everybody about our big contest for 2023. We're going to help find a new writer in comic books. We're partnered with Dream Foundry on this, and just remember the deadline is the end of September to get your stories in. So to kick the show off, my name's Shane.
I'm Paul.
I'm Ben.
And I'm Mike. Let's get this show started.
Well, welcome to another episode. We've got a great talent with us today. Mark, why don't you just go ahead and introduce yourself? And
Hey, well, I'm Marc Guggenheim. I'm a writer, producer, director. I like to say my brand is Jack of all trades, master of none.
Heck yeah.
And yeah, it's great to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, Mark.
absolutely, we're honored to have you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess what am I going to talk about? Well, let's see. Well, it's funny. It's weird because in 2020, before COVID, I made this New Year's resolution that I was going to get back into creator-owned comics. I had done some in previous years, but sort of got distracted and busy with other things. And I was like, oh, I really want to make a big push into creator-owned comics. And then the pandemic hit, and suddenly I had all the time in the world because television and film production was shut down. And I actually was like the only New Year's resolution I've ever managed to keep, because I managed to suddenly have all this unexpected time. So, and then completely unplanned, almost all the projects that I did during that period have come out in the last 3 to 4 months. So I've got, in no particular order, Last Flight Out with Dark Horse, Fragmentation with Dark Horse, Too Dead to Die with Image, and a new series that dropped just a couple of weeks ago on February 15, Torrent, also with Image. So busy. I'm sort of flooding the market with my own stuff. I feel like I'm my own competition right now. It's par for the course.
No, wait, buy this book. No, wait, buy this book.
Yeah, I don't plan things out particularly well. But I'm really lucky. Like I've been very fortunate. Like, I'm doing, I did Last Flight Out with Eduardo Ferragato. I did Fragmentation with Benny LaBelle, Too Dead to Die with Howard Chaykin, and Torrent with Justin Greenwood. So I'm really very fortunate that I've had a chance to work with just top-notch, great artists all the way around. And then also, again, completely unplanned, I started writing comic books again, like, work for hire comic books again. So I've been doing a lot of things in the Star Wars space, which has been a dream come true for me because I'm a huge Star Wars fan. I am also going to be doing a 5-issue miniseries set in shortly after the events of Star Trek: The Motion Picture for IDW. And right before this, I was doing revisions on the second issue of a miniseries that I'm doing for Marvel that's not Star Wars related. So a lot of comic book stuff, and then some TV and film stuff too. But I've been keeping busy.
Man, we Shane and I, before you joined us, we were talking about Torrent.
Yeah.
And holy moly, what a great first issue! Like,
Thank you.
I was holding it up there with like, well, I felt like Invincible is where I was holding it up there with. In terms of like, yeah, I mean, in terms of like this great like character building right off the bat, you totally were getting everybody, and then a friggin' like right hook that you just don't see coming.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to give anything away for our viewers, but holy moly, what a great first issue!
Thank you very
really
much.
Loved it. Yeah.
I really appreciate that. I have to say, it's getting a phenomenal response. It's probably like some of the best reviews I've gotten in comic books, and I've been doing this a while. So it's really just very, very gratifying and really, really nice. So thank you very much.
I mean, I really enjoyed it. One of the things that came to my mind when I was looking at it was honestly Kick-Ass. There's some stuff in there that kind of felt a little bit like that. But, to Ben's point, there's this kind of great, buildup that you do. And boy, there's a real gut punch towards the end. I don't want to give anything away either, just fantastic storytelling and character development. Just, I can't rave enough about it. It was great.
Thank you. We're having a blast doing it. It's a lot of fun. And, our goal with it is to really sort of surprise people with every issue. I think, the way issue 2 ends is not what anyone is expecting. There's a bigger surprise at the end of issue 2 than there was even at the end of issue 1. So
wow,
I think so. Yeah, I definitely think so. We're not like, we're not wasting time. The story moves incredibly fast. This is the opposite of decompression. This is like old school compression, where the moves that happen in each individual issue are really, really big. And that's, that was very much by design, because we want to sort of tell sort of a Bronze Age kind of story with, 21st century, I don't know what age of comics we're in, platinum, whatever age of comics we're in, like we wanted to use like modern day storytelling techniques to tell a Bronze Age kind of story. But maintain that level of propulsion that you would get in those Bronze Age comics, where, you couldn't believe how much work, has gone into each individual story and how much story is being pushed. And we like that breakneck, almost reckless pace.
Well, I really, appreciate that as far as a reader, but also, some of the folks we've talked to over the last year or so have like talked about the issues, the problems of trying to get people to continue to read issue to issue. You know what I mean? They buy issue 1 or they wait for the trade paperback, whatever. But something like this kind of storytelling, I feel like helps keep the reader, like, I know I finished it and I was like, okay, shit, where's issue 2?
Cool.
So that keeps the people coming back. Do you feel like, was that part of the thought process, or is it just kind of came organic?
I'll be honest with you. I wish. I wish I had those sort of commercial instincts. I wish I knew how to know how to build an audience and get them to come back for more. I just don't. That's not a club I have in my bag. Fundamentally, I write stuff that I think works for me and hope that it will work for other readers, but I'm not particularly good about, gaming the system. I wish I was. I wish I was a lot more commercial minded. I bet my agents wish I was a lot more commercial minded also.
Well, I mean, kind of piggybacking onto that, when you were writing this, did it cross your mind at all as far as, well, we don't know if we're going to end up doing multiple episode issues? Are we just going to go forward and assume that we're going to tell, 10 issues or however many you have in your head? And I think the reason I ask that is because I often have the feeling when kind of these smaller indie artists that we talk to, they talk about the struggle it is just to get that first issue out, and they don't even know if they're going to get funded for the second one. It's almost like they kind of have to tell a complete story in the first issue and hope that they get enough to do the second one. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think, that wasn't the case with us. We knew that we were going to go past issue 1. I think, I'm so trained at this point to sort of think of a first issue the way I think of the first episode of a TV show, but that it's sort of its own pilot, that even if it ends on a cliffhanger very much the same way Torrent number 1 does, it's a cliffhanger that feels like it comes after a complete meal. So that's just, unfortunately, like how I, that's sort of how I just instinctively process these stories at this point. And I think there's something very, there's a certain a special kind of art form to writing a first issue and writing a last issue. Unfortunately, I've had a chance to write a lot of last issues in the course of my comic book career.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Did you have another one, Shane?
No. I was just going to say, I think for our viewers, a lot of, I think people that watch this show are people that are, just getting ready to start their own career. And I think it's, great information that you're giving to them as far as just, write with the intention that it's going to keep going. And I absolutely love the idea of ending on a cliffhanger. That's, it keeps you coming back for more.
It does. Yeah. It does. And I also I still like the idea of writing at sort of a reckless, what I call a reckless pace, because I think that's, again, that's something I basically write for the audience that I am. I basically write the kind of things I think I would enjoy in a comic book, because I've been reading comic books my whole life, and, maybe I'm not completely representative of the marketplace, but I don't think I'm, too much of an outlier either. So I kind of figure like, well, if I like it, if this is the type of comic book that would keep me coming back for more, there'll be some other people, that is true for as well. And again, saying that that definitely seems to be the case with Torrent, which is great. It's very, very nice. I've worked on plenty of comic books where it just like landed, with a thud. That's not the case here, which is really, really
nice. No, that's great. That's great.
Well, that brings me to my next question, though, regarding writing, because we're writing for comics and stuff. I saw that you had started in comics as an intern, at Marvel back in '90 or so. Later on, the years as a lawyer, and then getting into television. And it was some legal stuff that you wrote about for television. Yep. Was the intent, like when you were writing for television, the intent to eventually get into writing comics and comic-related media? Or were you just like, I'm just excited to write, and then all of a sudden, the comic stuff came about?
No, if anything, left to my own devices, I would have written comics first. That's what I was more passionate about. The thing was that I always say it sounds very paradoxical, but it's easier to break into Hollywood than it is to break into comics as a writer.
Really?
Because with Hollywood, there's television staffing season, there's workshops, there's agents and managers and people who can get you gigs and get you read. There's none of that in comic books. It's much easier for an artist because, artists, there's portfolio reviews at conventions. You're not asking someone to read anything. It's just hold up the page, right? With there's no on-ramps for comic book writers. So ironically, it was just easier to write television. And once I was writing television, I always give credit to Kevin Smith and Joe Straczynski for my comic book writing career, because those guys were they were the pioneers. They were the people from Hollywood who broke the doors open in comics for people such as myself. And, I was writing on Law and Order when I broke in at Marvel. I like to say I actually had to break into comic books twice, because about a year, it was a year before I got my first gig at Marvel. I had written 2 issues of Aquaman, and these 2 issues so set the world on fire that no one ever called. Kurt Busiek said something very nice in the news around the message board, and I will say Portsack Fischer, who's become a very good friend. He was an editor at Vertigo, and he reached out to me, but no one else did. It was like literally the comics came out and no one cared. To such an extent that a year later, breaking in at Marvel was as if those 2 issues of Aquaman never existed. In fact, I think the folks at Marvel were far more interested in my work on Law and Order than they were on Aquaman. So, I had to break into it twice because, why should anything be easy?
That's funny.
Earlier, Shane was like, well, why didn't he write for She-Hulk? It was an attorney show and superhero.
Right? Yeah, it's right there.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, you mean why didn't I write for the show?
Yeah.
Oh, good question.
I mean, it seems like a perfect fit.
It does actually.
Legal background, right?
Yeah.
Kevin, give me a call, man. You a Daredevil now. Jeez.
Right? There you go.
Yeah. What do I got to do?
You got the legal chops. You got the superhero chops.
Yeah.
You got it all.
Yeah, I know. I'm just waiting for the phone to ring.
That's right. We'll be your hype man for you.
Okay, feel free, please. I'll cut you in for a piece of it.
Nice.
Just a walk-on role where Daredevil knocks us out with it. That's good.
That's another hallway scene.
That hallway scene. Dynamite.
I know.
So good, man.
Yeah, that's good stuff.
Well, speaking. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Shane.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, speaking of film and stuff, we saw that Too Dead to Die already picked up for a film with Universal. Congrats on that.
Thank you.
Can you tell us more about that,
Yes.
that process to that? Because it seems that in my mind, I mean, as an outsider, it seemed like a quick, book comes out, it gets picked up. But was that something that
was actually even quicker than you realize, because the
Wow.
news came out just the other week. On that day, just to show you how late the news was, on that day, I just happened to turn in my third draft of the screenplay. So this has actually been in the works for a while. And the way it happened was, we set it up before the graphic novel even came out. And what happened was I had written an adaptation of Rob Liefeld's Prophet for Jeff Romanov's company, Studio 8. And there was a producer there named Guy Danella, who I worked with. And then Guy went over to 87 North, which is David Leitch's company. They did Violent Night and Bullet Train. And Guy reached out to me and said, he sent me a comic book and he said, would you take a look at this and let me know if you have any interest in adapting it as a movie? And I read it and I thought it was good. But I was like, oh, wait a second. The Two Dead to Die in 87 North and their brand, that's a really good fit. Maybe Guy would be interested in reading it. And Guy did. And he dug it and was just incredibly instrumental in, getting it going. We actually have an A-list actor who's like the perfect bit of casting that I can't talk about, but like that's all thanks to Guy. Guy's been just an incredible champion of this project from day one. But yeah, we actually had it set up at Universal before the graphic novel even came out. I owe one more pass, I think, on the script before it can go to the studio, but it feels really good. It's a lot of fun, because it really does fit with 87 North's brand, which is incredible action, but humor and a real point of view. David Leitch had directed, for example, Deadpool 2, so it gives you a little bit of a sense of what that company's all about. So yeah, it's been a great experience and a lot of fun. It's that I'm really, really excited about.
I mean, Bullet Train and Violent. I loved both those. Violent Night.
I loved Violent Night. Like love. Just made me so happy. So yeah, I'm really I'm psyched. Like we and just to be clear, like I never do any comic book property with the intention of turning it into anything. It's always nice, that's always great. But I feel like, first of all, I as a writer can feel if I'm like trying to work backwards from a screenplay, and I feel like the readers can sense it too. On some level, they feel like you're just turning that film pitch into a comic book. Like I don't like, again, I write for the version of myself that's a consumer, and I wouldn't, I don't read any comic books that I feel are like just retrofitted or reverse engineered TV and film pitches. So I try to avoid that as well. And the funny thing is that with Two Dead to Die, this is the very first time I'm adapting my own material. So after all these years of adapting other people's material and basically saying like, whatever it's a TV show or a movie, it can't be 100% faithful to the source material because it's a different medium and you've got to change things to take advantage of the new medium and to avoid the things that don't work from the old medium. I'm now like, oh, well, okay, hoisted on my own petard. I'm going to have to see if I can walk my own talk. So it's been an interesting, humbling experience, but a lot of fun as well.
It's kind of like, you're probably looking at, as writers, look at your work as like your children. You're looking like, oh, I got to chop this one up and create something else out of it.
Well, and actually the funny thing is, like, the first draft of the screenplay was incredibly faithful to the graphic novel. And honestly, like, didn't work for that reason. Like, again, just like the thing I've been saying all these years, like, I know we as comic book fans love like, comic book faithful or comic book, fidelity. But the truth is they're different mediums. They're different art forms. They require different things narratively. Yeah. And, unless you sort of accept that and embrace it, you're going to end up with something that doesn't work fundamentally for whatever reason. So, it just happens to be true.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there was an interview with Kirkman talking about The Walking Dead, and they asked him, about the changes that they made, obviously from the book to the show, and his comment was, well, why would I want to do the exact same thing? What's coming. Then there's no surprises. I wanted to change things up. Maybe things I had ideas for in the book that I didn't do, and now I get to do it differently for the show.
Absolutely, and just even spoiler alert, just the idea that. That if you are, that if you die, you reanimate. That's huge. Like that is a game-changing idea that came at the end of season 1 of Walking Dead. Again, spoiler alert, but very, very different from the comic, and really, fundamentally changes the whole thing. I thought it was a really good change. And obviously Robert must have been on board with it because, that's what they ended up doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, one thing I wanted to ask about, it seems like you have all these different projects that you're working on kind of simultaneously. How do you keep all that, juggling at the same time and keep, everything at the same quality level, essentially, that you want it to be?
Well,
don't accidentally write Han Solo into Simon Cross. And
I haven't done that. No, what it is? It really goes back to my days as a lawyer, because despite what, television would have you believe, and I'm as guilty of contributing to this misapprehension as anyone, but despite what television has you believe, lawyers don't handle one case at a time. When I was a litigator, I handled probably like 15 cases at one time, with 5 of the 15 being like active at any given moment in time. So I'm very used to juggling different things, moving from one thing to the other, and keeping the quality up because, the stakes in law are a lot higher than in Hollywood or comics. Like if I turn in a bad script, the only person who suffers is me. You screw up as a lawyer and, it's a malpractice suit waiting to happen. So very high standards, very, very high stakes. And that just sort of was good training for how to handle multiple things and recognize when different things need to get done. And I kind of organize my writing day the same way I organized my day as a litigator, which is I would start with the most cognitive intensive stuff early because I wouldn't say I'm a morning person, but I'm the freshest in the morning, like most people. So, first drafts of things happen in the morning. Rewrites and, research and stuff, that happens at the end of the day. So I'm making sure that by scheduling my workload, I'm taking advantage of the best times of the day to do the right type of thing. And that's one of the ways I, keep the quality up. And, and the other thing is, sort of just recognizing that there's always more time than you think to do everything. And there's no benefit to rushing and there's no benefit to shitting it out. It's you take that extra day, you take, that extra hour, and you'll find the time, on the back end somewhere.
That's awesome.
Very good.
Well, I had a follow up to that then about at the beginning of this, you mentioned how the legal shows make us, think one way when it's, actually another way. Of all the legal, do you watch legal television at all? And if so, what's been the most realistic one that you've seen?
Well, it's funny. I used to watch. First of all, there used to be more legal shows on the air.
There was a ton.
In terms of most realistic, She-Hulk, obviously.
Obviously, yes, of course.
The most realistic. That's a great. I'm a little biased because I worked on this show, but I do have to say, David Kelly's The Practice. Did a really, especially in the early seasons, it did a really great job of conveying a lot of the hustle and bustle of being a litigator. A lot of I actually, when I was practicing in Boston where the show was set. So just the way motion practice works, where it's sort of like a little bit of a cattle call and, it's like, fast food, you're moving through it very, very fast. David really captured that, I thought, extremely well. I feel like that's the most realistic Law show.
Yeah.
Certain
I
aspects.
thought you were going to say Eli Stone, but
oh gosh, no. No. Eli was the only thing about Eli that was real was the corporate, when he was just like the corporate drudgery that he escaped in the pilot. That was very real. That was very autobiographical. Nothing particularly realistic about Eli.
No, I really enjoyed that show too.
Thank
but
you.
That's why I had to bring that one up. Shane and I were when we were talking before this started too. We noticed that your wife had worked on Agent Carter.
Yes,
and you obviously had co-developer and showrunner for the Arrowverse over on for DC. Was there any rivalry at home with different comic companies?
No.
For television, no.
People like to definitely. A friend of ours who works at the Hollywood Reporter did a Valentine's Day piece, like sort of about the fact that we work on opposite sides of the street. But the funny thing is, like, you have to understand, before Arrow, I had been writing for Marvel for like almost 10 years.
Yeah.
So, like, I was like, wait a second, like. I feel like I've been very, very working both sides of the street with both DC and Marvel. So it was like, it was this rivalry that existed really for the purposes of good headlines, So I will say though, there was one year where we were both competing for the same writer. That was very Lindsay Allen, who's incredibly talented.
Nice.
We both worked with over the years. We were both competing for her, and Tara won. Tara got her.
Nice.
But that was frustrating.
That's too funny. Well, obviously, the rivalry between Marvel and DC, we're not talking about different political groups. We're talking about the same, geek cultures. So it's a much more fun rivalry.
I agree.
Sure.
I agree. Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, I mean, I know, like, there is like a real, like, as much as there's a rivalry between DC and Marvel, like on the stands. The truth of the matter is, like, everyone I know, like, they all, hang out together and they like each other, and, and they're fans of each other's work, and that's what's really nice about the comic book community.
Yeah, 100%. Sticking with the television stuff, if you don't mind, we keep going, Shane.
Please.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
Sticking with the television stuff, I have to admit, I was a huge Arrowverse fan, but I have to admit, when it first came out and it was coming out on the CW, I was very leery at first. I was like, oh my gosh, the CW, I don't know if that's like how it's going to turn out.
That's because they didn't market it the way we wanted to market it. We wanted to market it from the writers of Green Lantern.
Yeah,
that would not have been good. But that was our joke.
That would not have been. That wouldn't have worked.
That was our joke.
Oh man!
Sorry, I feel like I cut into your question.
No. I don't know, because I thought I was worried, CW and all that, but it was actually dark and gritty, and the fight scenes were great and all that. It blew me away for like what like it was almost networkish television could do for a superhero show. When you were coming into that, was that difficult to get CW to agree to all the stuff you guys wanted to do with Arrow?
No,
because based on like their track record before, I didn't know if if they would.
It's funny. I think it's a little bit like. First of all, I will tell you, like, CW, Mark Pedowitz, who was the president of the CW the whole time we were doing the Arrowverse, Greg and I had worked with him back when he was the head of ABC Studios. We did Eli Stone for him. So we have a shorthand with Mark, and Mark has always been incredibly supportive, and his team was incredibly supportive. But we sort of came into Arrow as a little bit like remember this is a deep cut, but like, remember the Frank Miller Ronin comic?
Yes.
The house ads said, if you intend to die, you can do anything. And it was a little bit like, if you don't like give a fuck, you can do anything. And what we didn't give a fuck about was whether or not the show got put on the air. Because we were coming off of Green Lantern. It had been, quite frankly, a horrible experience for us. We lost all control over it. And we got embarrassed as a result of it. So the whole idea of we almost didn't do Arrow at all, period, full stop. The only way we agreed to do Arrow is if we said, okay, we're going to do this outside of the normal process. We're going to have 2 meetings. We're going to meet with the studio and we're going to meet with the network. In both meetings, you will hear what the entire show is. We will not do a story area. We will not do an outline. You will not put an article in Variety about this. No one is going to know we're doing this.
Wow.
At the end of 3 or so weeks, you will get a script. And at that point, you can decide whether or not you're making the show. So it was but again, like we sort of created this sort of circumstance for ourselves because it was sort of the only way off of the Green Lantern experience that we would have actually done another DC character, much less another DC character with green in the name. I mean, geez, like how
oh my gosh,
how masochistic do we have to be?
Right.
So and again, to Warner Brothers and the CW's credit, they were on board with that. Like I said, we worked with them. Greg had a long relationship with Peter Roth, the head of Warner Brothers Television, and we had a long relationship with Mark Pedowitz, head of CW, and they were foolish enough to trust us.
Well, I'm glad they did because it panned out, man. It was
that worked out.
Sure
okay.
did.
Yes, thank you. I'm glad they did.
That green worked out okay.
That worked out okay. That worked. And I tell you, had we gotten the chance to do the Green Lantern we wanted to, that would have worked out well too.
Nice.
I always tell people a very, very simple Google search will surface our first draft. And it's very much a first draft. I mean, I'm not going to say it's amazing, but it shows you what we had in mind for this property. Suffice it to say, CG suits were not in that idea. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's go ahead, Jim.
No. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because in a lot of ways it kind of reminds me of. I'm sure you've heard all the stories of Kevin Smith sharing his Superman script writing endeavors.
It's challenging because also these are big movies. I kind of when the original movie was written by me, Greg, and Michael Green, and Greg was going to direct it. And basically, I'm like, just Warner Brothers woke up one day and said, "Wait a second, we're going to give a $200 million movie to 3 TV writers? Like, forget about that." And it's like, of course they're not going to. We felt like we were robbing a bank. So we couldn't believe we were getting as far as we got.
Wow.
But it's it is what it is, and I think the years have been kinder to Green Lantern than I've been. I think there are people who have sort of discovered it, on other platforms, and kind of like it, So I'm like, God bless them.
Yeah. Well, I know my kid loves Ryan Reynolds, and so when she watched it, she loved it too. So there is an audience.
There's definitely an audience, which is always great. Like and even we always said when we were working on Arrow, the opposite of love isn't hate; it's apathy. So even when someone hates something, I'm like, okay, well, we still got an emotional response out of you.
That's true.
That's something. That's got to count for something.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I'm kind of a horror movie fan, and there's a indie film that just came out recently called Skinamarink. I don't know if you've heard about that. And that film is just like you said, there's people all the way from one side to the other side, completely hate it and absolutely love it. And I haven't really found anybody that was like, no, it was okay. There's it's extremes. And I think that extreme that's what has people talking about it.
Absolutely.
It comes up in conversation.
Yeah. Take a big swing. And also, movies especially, but even TV shows too, they age differently. They with time, some movies appear much better and other movies appear much worse. And, it is very much a function of, of just where the audience is in their lives and in their moment in time for when they take in the content. So
100%,
that's, that you just sort of put it out there. And like I said, I would always rather some emotional response than just the bland, yeah, it's okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100%.
Shane, did you want to ask him about Chaykin? I know you were.
Oh yeah, real quick. Yeah, so Chaykin. I've been reading. I think you and I are actually kind of similar in age. When I was reading books in the '80s, I was actually a big Chaykin fan, and I read American Flag and his work on Shadow, and so I love his art style. It's just
me too.
I love it.
Me too.
So just curious how you got connected with him.
Oh, good question. Well, I started out as a fan. Really from Star Wars. Because he did the original, issues of Star Wars, and then The Shadow and American Flag. He did a great run on The Shadow for DC Comics, and then Black Hawk. I mean, I just huge Dominic Fortune, you name it. So this is actually when I was working on the first season. First season of Eli Stone. I was writing my first book for Marvel that was like an ongoing was Blade. And I worked with Howard on Blade. And then, I forget which came first. Was it Blade? We also did 6 issues of Wolverine together. And I think it was Wolverine that came first and then Blade, but I don't remember. At any rate, Howard's since become a very good friend. And I really enjoyed working with him. And like I said, during the pandemic, I started writing comics. And for what became Too Dead to Die was just this idea that I had burning in my notebook for a number of years. And it was one of the first, pandemic comics that I wrote. And when I write, I write full script and so it's like page 1, panel 1, this is happening, this is what's being said. And I picture some version of the art in my head. And I was like about 10 pages in when I realized, the art I'm seeing in my head is Howard's. And so I got to page 20 or something, and I emailed him and just said, hey, do you have any interest in, reading something? I basically accidentally wrote it for you. And he checked it out, and he was in immediately. Wow. It was great. We, because like I said, I love Howard personally. I love working with him professionally. He's a legend. He's, an iconic, legendary artist. So it's fun to work with someone who's a future Eisner Hall of Famer. And this in particular, like I said, I think the reason I was seeing Howard's art in my head was this is just so perfect for him. Secret agents and, international locales and beautiful women, this is Howard's jam. So it's been great. It's been a really fun collaboration. So I'm always looking for the next opportunity with Howard.
That's awesome.
That's so fun.
It's so cool when you write something, then it comes. Oh, sorry. When it comes together, I'm sure if you write a piece that's specifically for television or for films, if you have an actor in mind that you've kind of written it for, and it all comes together, it just makes the whole piece better. I'm sure
it does. I will say I'm not one of those writers who writes with a actor in mind. I part of it is what I call my actor vocabulary is actually pretty bad. I don't have that perfect recollection of every actor out there. Casting is just not one of my strong suits.
Yeah.
So
gotcha.
That's what they have casting agents for it.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. You want to I really rely more than other writers on the casting directors I work with, because I really need them not just to like suggest actors, but also to like kind of be a hedge on my taste. There's times where, I have not been right. And I'm very cognizant of that. There's nothing annoys me more in Hollywood than the people who are wrong and can't admit it. I'm very happy to admit when I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Nice.
I was going to say, and it's very impressive. You went from being a fan of Howard Jenkins on Star Wars comics to writing Star Wars comics and getting to work with Howard.
Yeah.
Did you envision that back in, the kid who was reading these the old Marvel Star Wars comics and stuff like that?
No,
one day this would be.
Honestly, like, it's funny. On Friday, March 3rd, that'll be my 23rd anniversary of coming to Los Angeles. And
wow.
And even after all those years, I really feel like I'm still living someone else's life. That the real me is still back in Boston practicing law.
Wow.
And that's kind of the only way I've been able to reconcile in my brain the sheer insanity of getting the chance to, work with someone like Howard, or, to be able to write for Jake Gyllenhaal, or to, I mean, all the amazing, crazy things I've had the chance to do over the years. I don't really believe it. To work with Marv Wolfman, I mean, like, it's all insanity. And the only way I can make the insanity make sense is if, really the real me is still toiling away back in Boston.
Well, yeah. I mean, your body of work is just absolutely incredible.
Oh,
and like I said at the beginning, this is just an absolute pleasure for us to have you on the show. So can't thank you enough.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. It was a lot of fun, guys. Really great questions.
All right. Well, thanks for tuning in. This was another fantastic episode. Please remember to hit that like, subscribe, and notification bell so we can keep bringing you content like this. And we'll see you on the next one.